and it's what we're going to go through together. We do acknowledge that in African society, alcohol has a place. That many of us in our communities, it is what kicks off the celebration for both happy and sad moments when we can come together as individuals. But we also acknowledge that alcohol has some harmful effects. And it is our work and responsibility, both as individual players, but also as the association, to ensure that those harmful effects are minimized. So we'd like to speak to the particular bill, Excise Duty Amendment Bill. And I'd like to draw your attention to Section 3B of the bill, number 2, that states that beer whose local raw material content, including water, is at least 75% by weight of its constituent, and the proposed increase of the excise rate from 30% or Uganda shillings 650 to 30% or Uganda shillings 900 shillings per litre, whichever is higher. We are not aligned to the proposal from the Ministry of Finance, and these are the reasons that we are not. And so we're here to share our views with you for consideration. One is that our preliminary impact assessment indicates that the proposed measures would have the following consequences. For note, this is a 38% increment of beer made from local raw materials. One is the agricultural supply chain disruption. Beer is made from majorly agricultural crop. On the last page of this, you will see our spend and the different kind of crop that we spend on to actually make beer. Other than water, which is 95%, which constitutes 95% of beer, the other is maize, cassava, barley, and sorghum. So, because maize and sorghum are food crops as well, we buy those from the open market. But we specifically contract farmers, 25,000 of them across the country, to grow barley and sorghum. So the impact, we believe, is going to affect these smallholder farmers who grow sorghum and barley as cash crops, specifically for the brewing industry. And they would face immediate reduction in demand for their produce. We've shared an attachment with you in 114 constituencies, some of which are represented on this committee, where we actually invest in agriculture. And we know, honorable members, that one of the biggest burdens on an elected official is actually cash handouts or cash requests from people that you represent. Every opportunity that everyone gets to actually have an economically empowered constituency is an opportunity for everyone. So we have no economic impact. We believe that the proposed tax structure would force breweries to reduce local grain purchases by an estimated 30%, representing approximately 45 billion in lost farm income annually. Many farmers who have transitioned to growing these crops as reliable sources would actually face uncertainty regarding alternative market for their harvest. Government policy promotes modernization of agriculture. And we think we've been able to hack this particular relationship where smallholder farmers have a reliable and consistent market for their produce. And this puts money in their pockets every season. And so we believe that transitioning from this particular crop that is profitable to them, that is reliable, that is actually changed communities and trading centers would actually be a huge detriment to them. We also believe that there are broader economic effects. One, the ripple effect would actually impact rural transporters, aggregators, and local economies which are dependent on the brewing supply chain. Now, honorable members, sometime last year we were here again sharing our views with some of you about when we were debating the alcohol control bill. And one of the salient features that came out was the fact that 65% of all alcohol consumed in Uganda is what we call illicit. It is not categorized, it is not recorded, it is not standardized, it is not regulated, and does not contribute taxes. That is 65%, which means that only 35% of the legit alcohol is actually represented by the players in front of you and others that will join us later. So we believe that if we increase taxes on the legit and regulated and standardized alcohol, that will be a goal in favor of illicit alcohol, because illicit is mostly driven by affordability. And so if someone has a chance, say, to take a beer, but they cannot afford it, they move to sometimes unregulated and poisonous alcohol because that is what they can afford. And that is what is growing the illicit market segment. We also think that this would have an impact on consumer prices and inflation. Contrary to popular demand, beer prices are elastic. And when the beer prices could rise up to 40%, and this would reduce affordability, and this would fuel inflationary pressures, leading to lower tax collections, as has happened in Tanzania in 2023. We've shared some examples. Let me explain. This particular tax, Honorable Chair and members, touches on the affordable...
Members, let's have one meeting. You can do the consultation a bit later. Yeah, you have the mics there. You don't need to whisper to someone. Do you? No, before I called you to order, you were bending your back. You can normally.
You synthesize the ideas first before you.
You're not sure what you wanted to say.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair.
Yes.
Chair, I want to most and even ours. We find this very clear and acceptable, Chair. This one now we are going to simply, internalize and most likely be on the same page. Chair, I beg to propose.
Honorable Katesh?
Yeah, Chair, sometimes I wonder how we get to this point. Because we are trying to promote value addition in Uganda. We have extended wealth funds to our local people through PDM and Emyoga for them to be able to grow. I have seen an attachment here. Although I didn't know that in Shemba we don't grow barley. I was looking for... I mean, this is, Mr. Chairman, this is an industry where we are trying to say, use our raw materials, produce local beer. How then do we start to raise our appetite to tax this product knowing that the impact is directly going to affect the farmers in your different regions. I have not seen my, but I want to really say we have people who are growing sorghum, cassava, and all these products, and we should make sure that our regime, our excise regime, is stable to give people time to grow. So, without listening, because when he's speaking, I feel traumatized, and I am not ready to listen anymore. We should just let them go. We have our in-house meeting and we move.
Yeah, thank you, Robert Katesh.
The woman MP for Napak. In Napak, sorghum is our cash crop.
Thank you, Chairman.
My name is Mpindi Bumari. I'm a National Member of Parliament representing persons with disability and member of this committee.
Yes, Honorable Pair.
Yes,
Just,
Chair.
oh, sorry, there is still another member.
I'm Kefa Chwanuka, MP Chibok.
Yes, Honorable Pair, if it is still in that line,
Yeah,
before I
thank
make
you.
a ruling.
Thank you, Chair. Want to appreciate my colleagues. Anything that touches the limited market that we have for our locally grown products, we have to be very conscious about it. Looking at this, Chair, I'm wondering if our sorghum is not bought and all this that our farmers, and I think they talked about reduction of about 40%. I'm wondering what would be the motive of this tax which are being introduced. Secondly, Chair, I've heard about Uganda breweries and Nile breweries. I've also got information that one of the breweries, these ones who are sitting here, go and process some of these things from Kenya, then they bring it back.
Yeah,
While
so maybe, you know, there was the past two members mentioned it was actually a point of procedure that whether we should still continue listening to this.
No, but I think, Chair, for me,
But I think that's what we're saying. You also, if it's not in line to that, you mentioned whether you still wanted to.
yeah,
to ask
much
a
as
few
they are
questions.
going,
No, we have not yet. I have not yet made a ruling.
much as we may not be really so much in detail engaging with them, but there are also some questions that they need to answer. For example, on the value addition issue, that are all these products that you've listed here being produced from here and value added from here? That I think would be very critical, because as a country we are looking at how do we add value to our products and sell a finished good than buying our raw materials, taking it out of the country and bringing it back and selling us the finished good. I think that clarification would be critical. Lastly, Chair, we've got particularly, I don't know about other regions, but in the north there is a booming business of wine, local wine, and they claim that they're making it using the local fruits around. I also want to hear from the leaders of this association, which is very interesting, Alcohol Association, and there are more ladies than men. I hope that they are also customers for the association. I also want to know if these local wine the breweries are also part of this association, so that we are actually sure that whatever they are selling to our people is actually not dangerous to the population. I thank you.
Okay, thanks. From those observations, of course, what is
Chair,
very clear. Just a minute. I think you're preaching to this saying is actually they should be seated on that side of the aisle with you people. So that is loud and clear. You can just make one wrap up, and then we listen to some general issues that members will raise, and then you react to them and we end. So you can let him wrap up, then we listen to a few issues that you raised, and then we wrap up. Thank you.
Analyzing this and sharing with us what we believe are shared concerns. Two issues, Honorable. One is that a tax, specifically a high tax increase on this, is not only hurtful to the entire value chain, it's also not does not provide the hoped for collection for taxes. Because not only is it going to hurt everyone in the value chain, but also not realize the proposed tax gains. And as indicated, every time the affordable brands of alcohol have an increment in tax, the volume is almost doubles down in a drop, which then means that you actually sell less and unable to collect the taxes proposed. The best suggestion for us, and we think the best strategy, is actually to keep the excise stable. Because we've also indicated and shared evidence that over the past 7 years, the government has registered collections, increased collections of excise as a result of keeping it stable. So that said, Honorable Chair, there is a second proposal on external trade that I wanted to invite one of our members to take you through. Thank you very much.
So let's listen to the other aspect of the amendments.
Thank you. We circulated a second draft to members. Concerns regarding the scope, the legal interpretation, and practical implications of these proposals, particularly to their potential impact on manufacturing. We have two concerns. One, which is the lack of clarity on whether the infrastructure levy is a new tax or not. And the second, on the ambiguity in the term, the lack of clarity on whether this is a new tax or not a new tax. The proposed levy raises an immediate and material concern because the bill doesn't clarify whether the tax measure, whether this is a tax measure which is new or a codification of an existing levy. As you may be aware, the 1.5% infrastructure levy has been administratively applied by the Uganda Revenue Authority following the EAC Council of Ministers Legal Notice 22 of 2014. That regime applied primarily to dutiable imports from outside the EAC. However, the current bill fails to reference this regional legal basis and introduces broader language. It introduces goods imported for home use that could extend the levy's reach well beyond the original EAC mandate. In the absence of any express transitional provision, the omission creates ambiguity as to whether the proposed provision is merely codifying an existing tax or whether it's expanding its application to a new and wider category of goods. And this concern we would like you to look into. The second one, which is on ambiguity in the term home use and scope of exemptions, the phrase goods imported for home use is undefined and it's significantly broader than existing tax concepts. The bill does not provide clarity on how this term will be interpreted. The bill does not clarify whether the 1.5% infrastructure levy and 1% import declaration fee would apply to goods with a 0% ad valorem duty rate, for example. Secondly, the exemption under Clause 3A, Subclause 3C, concerning goods under a special operating framework specified in approved measures on import duty rates in the EAC CET is not defined or explained. It's unclear whether this clause is intended to include A, goods imported and originating from East African communities and COMESA partner states, which ordinarily attract preferential import duty rates, or two, whether goods approved under the duty remission scheme, which form the backbone of Uganda's import substitution and export-led industrialization efforts. The same lack of definitional clarity applies to Clause 3B under the import declaration fee provision. This legislative silence raises concerns on our part that productive imports will now be inadvertently taxed, eroding long-standing policy incentives. It also violates Uganda's regional trade commitments under EAC and COMESA and increases the cost of production while reducing investment competitiveness and discouraging local manufacturing and export diversification at a time when Uganda as a country is actively promoting industrialization and value addition. So our recommendations as follows. Given the uncertainty and potential adverse effects of the proposed bill, we respectfully recommend that Clause 3A, Subclause 3, Infrastructure Levy, and Clause 3B, Subclause 3, Import Declaration Fee, be amended to explicitly exempt 1. Imports approved under the Duty Remission Scheme as provided for in the East African Community Customs Management Act and the common external tariff. 2, that raw materials and semi-processed inputs used in manufacturing and export sectors, that raw materials and semi-processed inputs used in manufacturing and export sectors are also exempted. 3, that goods imported and originating from EAC and COMESA partner states are exempted provided they satisfy the relevant rules of origin criterion. 4, that goods with a 0% ad valorem duty rate as per the EAC common external tariff are also exempted. Lastly, that any such other goods, the exemption of which the minister may determine is in the public interest or to promote investment, can also be clearly exempted. So alternative proposals regarding the import declaration fee, IDF. In addition to the exemptions above, we urge that the Ministry of Finance consider the following alternatives in the spirit of regional alignment and in enhancing investment competitiveness. If they could convert the 1% import declaration fee into a fixed rate administrative charge of USD3 per consignment in line with other EAC partner states such as Rwanda, which has it at $2.17, and Burundi, which has it at $5, or they could revise the fee at a reduced rate of 0.3% of the customs value, rather than the proposed 1%, in recognition of Uganda's current economic context and industrial development stage that we are at. It's our proposal that this introductory rate be subject to annual review based on measurable indicators such as the macroeconomic growth trends, taxpayer compliance costs, and Uganda's regional competitiveness within the EAC community and other trade frameworks. So our justification for this proposal, as I conclude, is that we are still an emerging country, which within our own industrialization agenda, and imposing a 1% fee across all imports, including essential raw materials and intermediate goods, risks undermining competitiveness, discouraging investment, and increasing the cost of local production at a time when our regional peers are actually moving to reduce input-related trade costs. Notably, Tanzania applies an IDF of 0.6%, having deliberately chosen a lower rate to preserve its attractiveness for industrial investment while mobilizing revenue, and I think the trends have been seen. In contrast, Kenya's IDF of 2%, which is the highest in the region, has been widely cited as a factor contributing to the relocation of manufacturing and regional distribution hubs to neighboring countries due to the high import-related cost structures. A lower rate of 0.3% or fixed rate of $3 would enable the government to mobilize modest revenue without stifling productivity and competitiveness. This approach would strike a prudent balance between revenue mobilization and industrial policy, while allowing for evidence-based adjustments as the economy evolves and would also preserve Uganda's regional competitiveness. We welcome further engagements and are on standby, ready to work collaboratively with all stakeholders to realize our shared economic ambitions. In conclusion, honorable members, the alcohol beverage manufacturers remain committed to supporting government efforts to grow the economy together. We thank you when we submit.
Yes, thank you for, you need to answer this? Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And I think members, this has been very elaborate. They have mentioned the concerns and also the alternate proposals on some of the issues, especially the import duty. We have listened to them. That will help us process this bill later. Maybe before that, I would like to take this opportunity to ask members who have just come to introduce themselves. And then
thank you very much, Chair. And I'm Dr. Emily Kugonza, Member of Parliament for Buyanja East County in Kibale District and a member of this committee. Chair, apologies for coming late.
Thank you, Chair. One, I think because this levy has been applicable for some time, and as our committee, Chair, you know, I mentioned this yesterday that we demanded that we need to have international tax measures come to this committee so that we can be able to have an input, and that's why we have the External Trade Act. This is the first time we are having it before this committee since this parliament started. So it's a positive step by government. The issue now is about the scope and the exclusions, because I was part of the legislation when this was introduced way back in 2000, I think 15 or something. It was aimed at funding infrastructure projects, SGR and all this. And the way is to put it, there were two schools of thought that everybody needs to contribute. But then there's the other school of thought is that you must provide exclusions, because if you are saying medicines are exempt, or goods for use by the armed states are exempt, how do you then compute the tax? So we will have to, Mr. Chairman and colleagues, we will have to seek clarity from URA about the exclusions for these provisions, because if it is not handled properly, it could actually create a problem. I remember when we started, and Chair, you are aware in Arusha that Kenya did not want any exclusion for this. And I told the commissioner that you need to protect yourself from future problems. And when they refused it, a month later they imported the Dreamliner. And when they imported the Dreamliner, aircraft and aircraft parts are exempt, but then there was this 1.5, and the value was abnormal. So we had to do a crisis meeting to provide this exclusion. So we will have to examine it with the URA and the ministry to see whether you are. And on the import declaration, again, Chair, I think you are aware the practice is this fee for the administrations who have brought it in place. It is meant to finance the electronic systems that facilitate the trade clearances. So we may need to look at your proposal of the fixed charge vis-a-vis the 1%, the impact, and maybe be able to advise and make a decision. I submit, Chair.
Thank you so much. I think I will comment on the first one. The arguments about the excise duty on the beers, I do differ with my colleagues, Honorable Jane Avur and Dr. Alepe, because I think, I don't know who else supported. I want to differ with the arguments because probably they have seen their names on the list, you know. It's the first time I'm seeing a list of constituencies included on a presentation. So I see at the end of their presentation they have included the districts and the farmers that will be affected. But me, I want to speak of this more in an economic perspective, because honestly speaking, because the presenter talked about beer being elastic, but I'm certain in Uganda we've not yet reached that ceiling, because every time we have an increment, at least the decline has not been quite significant, and we are seeing still increases in revenue and taxes coming in. And you're giving a good example of Tanzania. Yes, there was an effect on Tanzania, I think, yeah. And I remember Tanzania did an increment which was quite huge, because right now I think they're charging more than on locally manufactured beers. It should be more than 1,000 Uganda shillings, which is about 680 Tanzanian shillings. So their tax is quite high. It's abnormal on the beers compared to Uganda. So I believe the argument would be that maybe the increment is quite too high at about 38%. Let's look at a slightly more increment, maybe from 600 something to maybe by 100 shillings. But you stating that we need to completely do away with this, I don't think it will help us as a country, because we are looking for revenue as a country, and we need somewhere, Chair, where we can get from this money. And so she has finally changed her mind, and okay, but
Chair, let me clarify. Chair, my proposal is that we've been somewhere. The jump is a little bit too high and too wide. If need be, because we are still in the second year or so of implementing PDM and encouraging farmers to grow more we are putting money in the hands of households. Let's do it gradually. But jumping from 650 straight away to 900, it undermines the efforts that the government is already putting in place, and the strategy of value addition and agro-industrialization. That is my argument. It's not that they should not even pay the 650. No, that one I don't support you. Maybe we stay where we are, or we increase very little.
Thank you, Jane, for supporting my view, because initially I thought you wanted us to do away with it completely, because we always have these amendments to excise duty every year, and we can tell when we reach that ceiling. Probably the URI will provide us with figures showing otherwise, that instead of getting more increments, that now the excise duty is actually decreasing because of the March increment. But I believe we are not yet there, because when you look at the consumption of alcohol in Uganda, beers, keeps growing each year, and the per capita consumption of about 7.7 liters per person, I think it's quite huge, and we need something. So maybe you'd bargain for something, but not telling us as a committee to completely ignore that it will affect our farmers, and then you list the constituencies and the MPs and maybe our voters out there, you want to see how they will react to it. I think we need to look at it in a broader perspective, because we need to support our farmers, and I'm certain we will support them, but not at the expense of completely doing away with this revenue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Information to what Honorable Karim, as the copy of the presentation I received did not have a list. I agree with the Honorable Karim that the list of Sogam area MPs wasn't necessary. It is intimidation to the members of parliament. Even then, the list is not conclusive. As I said earlier, I come from a district where Sogam is our cash crop. Our names are not in this list. So what was the list for anyway? I propose we do away with this list completely, as if it never existed. It will bring a problem.
So let me guide. I would like to guide that actually, if you had highlighted areas that produce and the tonnages that you buy there, that is sufficient. Because just areas alone are able to show us that our areas have potential for development if we improve and protect this kind of thing. And I think that's sufficient. And I would like to guide that we are going to expunge this list. We don't see money that is going to, and unless you're saying that you give money to these MPs to deliver to your farmers, you know. So you need, and I am guiding that we are going to expunge it, and then you will give us. This should be comprehensive, because you can see you're being given information here that some of the areas you've not mentioned actually produce. This is referred back for adjustment. Yes. Honorable members.
Chair, just to conclude, I think that is something we can deal with.
Yes.
And we can engage URL, we can engage all other agencies that are supposed to do this and find solutions to it, but not look at it in terms of the tax. Because you cannot tell me that someone who goes to a bar in Kampala and buys a beer will now resort to a Kavera that they are selling in Chikuwa because of this increment. So I think that is a different matter, and maybe your argument would be how best we can enforce and how we can deal with it and get away with these people doing illicit trade, how we can tighten maybe the laws and fines and all that, instead of you bringing it in terms of the perspective of the tax.
Certainly, colleagues, I think we need to raise our antennas to understand that as a country, that at some points you'll find some beer crossing from Uganda to Kenya, for example. Why? Because people are very sensitive about these prices. So whatever shift we are going to make, we must be cognizant of such operating forces in the community. Whereas it is true that these raw materials you use have that backward linkage that support our farmers, yes, That's why I was saying the other day when you came under PSFU that we need statistics that speak to this. And I was almost tempted to think that some of us that don't take your products maybe develop prejudice, but but would want to make sure also we reduce illicit. Friends, yesterday I had an opportunity. I was going to meet a friend. That's when I realized we had been discussing here. We had a discussion to do with tobacco. And I went to see a friend. He said, "Where are you?" He told me a place that I had never been to, called, is it Molchu? And I want to assure you, when I walked to some garden in that place, I realized there is a problem of illicit tobacco. People are smoking. And whereas we might say, no this, no that, but we need to be sensitive to the environment in which we are. So I want to believe that whatever we are discussing here, I want to assure you the committee is cognizant of some of those environments in which we operate. Yes?
Chair, you've stated something. I want to put it on record.
No, it wasn't.
No, I know it was on a lighter note, but I want to assure them that I'm not your client, but I do support whatever comes for the best of this country.
Yes.
If the figures and statistics show that you were doing badly and a decrease on taxes to do with beers, if it was affecting. So I'm doing this in the best of the
Yes.
country. Don't think that maybe because it's Karim and that, no, that is why the gamblers were here, and I did support on many of the things because of the revenue that we are getting, but not because I do gambling. So don't take it that it's because of Karim.
Thank you for that.
The segregation of the crop and how much we buy each and which quantities. We thought that would be very useful data. Honorable Karim, if I may respond briefly. The Tanzanian example, there was a 37% drop in beer volume. And there was a resultant 31%. Imagine what a 38% increase in excise would actually do. Another argument touches on the lower value, or what we call the affordable brands, the egos, that are made from sorghum, a bit of barley, cassava, and maize.
Remember when you just say the Eagles, you think
Sorry.
Karim knows the Eagles.
I apologize. There's a particular category in categorization in, let's talk to beer, because we're speaking about beer. The most affordable, our friends here, Uganda Breweries has Senator, and Nile Breweries has Eagle. A bottle of each of those goes for as low as 2,000 shillings, a half-liter bottle. And then you go categorization to Club, to Castle Light, to the premiums. This particular tax touches on the affordable brands, which sit at the level, as they actually, every time they grow, they are mining clientele from the illicit market. The illicit alcohol, as an example, is what has led, every time you hear of someone has drunk alcohol and passed away, every time you've heard that people have actually been celebrating and they're now blind, they're drinking alcohol that sometimes is as high as 80% alcoholic content. It is not standardized, it is not regulated, it is underground. And that is a huge problem. And so we're simply saying that if we do not discuss this wholesomely, and we've given examples of Tanzania, but if you look at the second appendix, it also shows that in the past, when we've revised prices due to inflation, due to increase in cost of production, the drop in the particular consumption is been so huge. An argument is that even the tax that is on paper going to be realized will not, because if I increase by 38% and I get a drop, say, of 50%, the tax that I should have realized is actually not going to come through. That's our argument. And in conclusion, we believe that We're not actually arguing for no payment of tax. The Alcohol Industry Association, or the alcohol industry, is one of the biggest contributors to tax. And we are proud of it. And would like to continue contributing because we are Ugandans. This is our country. And we believe that this particular value that is created within Uganda should be shared with everyone. But honorable members, poverty is a bad thing. And a farmer that has suddenly been able to earn an income and live a decent life and take their children to school, when you introduce a tax that is going to remove that money away from them, that is not good economics. And so we're simply saying, if you maintained the tax the way it is, you've actually provided evidence that you are actually going to make better collections. And that is good for the economy, that's good for the investors, and that is good for the farmers. I think the win-win situation in this particular case is actually maintain the rate as it is, because evidence has shown that when you maintain tax specifically on an elastic product, we are able to collect more. And finally, Honorable Chair, we have been here before. Several years ago, we had a beer called Chibuku, which had actually reduced illicit. And the reason it had managed to do that is because there was no excise on it. And a properly packaged, standardized beer, opaque beer from Sogam, was being sold at about 1,000 shillings. And the Revenue Authority was collecting upwards of 30 billion shillings a year from that particular category. This is what happened. A proposal to increase excise by 30% was mooted and passed. As a result, when we who were brewing, who had invested a lot of money into this particular product, took it to the market, having factored in the increase in tax, the market rejected it. To date, the brew house, everything that had been imported to actually make that beer Chibuku is rotting away in ginger. All the sorghum farmers that we had recruited and given crop and trained and given a dignified living, we had to drop them. So I'm simply saying that we can work with other categories, but evidence has shown that when you work with a segment that is affordable, a high increase in tax is actually going to be detrimental to everyone. So our prayer to you is not to exempt us from tax. We don't want to do that. We're simply saying, please maintain what has been working and keep the dignity of everyone in the value chain that has actually been enjoying this success.
Thank you.
Chair, just the last one on what he said. You've said the company is still closed, because I remember we solved that issue in the previous financials, the tax that had been previously increased. So you're still not operational.
No. It's not the company. That particular beer category, it was reduced eventually. It's taken a few years from 30% to 10%.
And still
the reason there's no investment at all from any of us is because it doesn't make economic sense. And so, if we make the same mistake on the next category of affordable beer, not only are we stopping investment in this particular category, but also hurting the very people that we're supposed to protect who depend on agriculture. Every farmer in this country wants a reliable market. These particular farmers, 25,000 farmers and their families, have a reliable market. We buy everything they produce at the end of the season. And then up to about 150 billion Uganda shillings that goes into their pockets every season, to the point that last year, when we bought crop, barley, that was more than what we needed, we malted it and exported it to Tanzania and Burundi. That is still our farmers earning an income from value addition and living a decent life. So ask again, consideration is just maintain the price. We're still paying a good enough contribution to the coffers. We are proud to be able to do that. Would like to do more, but it needs to be a fair tax.
Thank you. You know, Njuk is such a sweet talker who has his facts. The way he talks, you can think you should keep listening. But the good thing, you come with facts, and I want to thank you people for that. I had thought your